Namaste, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on Upanishads in plain English. It is to give a bird's eye view of the teachings of the Upanishads, starting with defining what an Upanishad means. The Upanishad is widely taken to mean certain books, but actually, Upanishad doesn't mean any book. Books are the secondary meaning of the word Upanishad. Adi Shankara says it clearly in one of his commentaries on the Upanishads that primarily the Upanishad is certain understanding, certain jnana, which completely removes worldly bonds, worldly bondage. It removes all kinds of sense of limitation, sense of being shackled, sorrow, agitations, all of them go away. And that is through pure understanding, not by doing anything, but by seeing rightly who one is, what this universe is. That's the meaning of the word Upanishad. And the books which have been later named Ishopanishad, Kenopanishad, and so on, the books are also Upanishads in a secondary sense. The sounds of the mantras come in between. That is, the highest meaning is pure understanding, nothing to do with word or sound. The second meaning is the sounds that constitute the mantras. And the third meaning is when those mantras are printed on books, well, that is also Upanishads. So, through Upanishads, you and I aspire for coming upon supreme happiness and ending of all sorrow. Now, this wisdom is called the wisdom of the ultimate truth, the infinite truth, the absolute reality. Therefore, it is Brahma Vidya, wisdom of Brahman. In Upanishads themselves, it is clarified that in that highest understanding, the difference is duality is erased. One of the mantras in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and there are thousands of them scattered. One of them in the Brihadaranyaka that I am referring to puts it this way in a poetic language, where one does not see anything or anyone other than oneself, where one doesn't hear anything or any other, where one does not smell anything other than oneself, and so on. And the right interpretation of this, as most illumined and competent teachers like Adi Shankaracharya gave, is that the absence of the other is actually such a vision where there are others, there is oneself in the physical sense, but the sense of otherness is gone. There is Brahma, and Brahma alone appears as countless names and forms. This is erasure of the ego. Therefore, recent masters like in the last century, Sri Ramana Maharshi highlighted the erasure of the ego because it is the ego born of spiritual ignorance and sustained by mischief of thoughts that constructs and maintains a sense of separate self. There is no separate self, there is only one pure self, in all living beings and even in inert objects. The one without a second is the highest teaching of the Upanishads. We will cover in another few minutes the central, the paramount, and the unique teachings of the Upanishads. And then, in the second part of this presentation, we will go into certain other teachings of the Upanishads, which may be found in other scriptures too, but we must point out that the Upanishads also cover those topics. So, coming back to the top notch teachings, which once more are central to Upanishads, these are the teachings which make Upanishads a distinct genre of Shastras and which are unique. They are not found anywhere else. If they are found, they are regarded as an echo of the Upanishads. So, one of the ways to point out how the highest truth is conveyed by the Upanishads is to quickly make a reference to the four well known great statements in the Upanishads. The great statements, Mahavakyas, are countless. However, four of them have been extremely well known, well recognized, much quoted, and so on. In the Rig Veda, in Aitareya Upanishad, there is a Mahavakya, Prajnanam Brahma, which says pure consciousness, pure awareness is the highest truth. Interestingly, in these days, in many universities, the study is taken up of consciousness. Consciousness studies is a new subject being studied in academic platforms. Pure consciousness, meaning a certain principle of knowing where what is known is secondary. The very principle of knowing, the truth behind how knowledge takes place. That is thanks to a principle called chit, and that is pure consciousness. If you say chitta, that is thought, that is memory, that is part of the personality. But chit, like in expressions like Sat Chit Ananda, chit is pure consciousness, which is called prajnanam in that Mahavakya. Prajnanam Brahma. From Rig Veda, let's say, to pick up another example, let's go to Yajurveda. You have in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Aham Brahmasmi. At the height of realization, the seeker, freeing himself or herself from all ignorance, gets the right understanding and loudly or softly or in her own mind, she says, I am Brahman. It's clear to me now. I am that absolute reality. Therefore, the truth of the entire universe and the truth of my existence are one and only one. From Rig Veda we came to Yajurveda. Let's move to Samaveda. In the Chandogya Upanishad, a certain teacher says to his student, the teacher also happens to be the father, and the student happens to be the son, and the Mahavakya goes, Tattvam Asi. The teacher says to the student, that highest truth, knowing which you will be liberated, is your own true nature. You are that. You are that. Tattvam Asi is the Mahavakya from Samaveda, from Chandogya Upanishad. And the last example for this brief introduction, we take something from Atharva Veda. In the Mandukya Upanishad, we have the statement, Ayam Atma Brahma. The self in me itself is the Brahman, the highest truth of the universe. Thus, oneness of one's own inner truth, the truth of one's own existence, and the truth of this seemingly infinite universe, these two truths are not two really, they are one. Therefore, we call it the non dual teaching, Advaita Vedanta. So, upon knowing this, one gets liberated. When we say one gets liberated, in no way it means there is one who is liberated and millions who are not liberated. That very idea, there are these millions, all that belongs to the domain of projection out of spiritual ignorance. An enlightened person does not bear or carry thoughts like, okay, I now got liberated and here are these folks, they need to be liberated, and so on. That is ridiculous. In enlightenment, one sees that there is liberation or Brahma only. But it continues to seem to seekers that there is instruction going on. Somebody is illumined, somebody else is not illumined. But the interesting part, which is a little challenging to anybody's intellect, is the one who is wondering that some are illumined, some are not, and etc. That entity who is imagining is also part of the error. So, this understanding of what avidya is, what error is one of the hard themes of this Vedanta. Therefore, competent teachers with very skillful tools, ways, convey it. And once the student understands what is conveyed, the student also realizes that there was, really speaking, no bondage at all. Therefore, let me say this and then move forward. The very notion that there was ignorance, there was misunderstanding, there was something called bondage, etc., is questionable. Therefore, we question the very perception that we have presently. To conclude this topic, it is not a case of there was a snake, it ran away, then we saw the rope over there, referring to the very well known illustration. The rope alone was, is, and will be, but there was a misunderstanding that there was or is a snake. Likewise, this world, this universe, this you and me, all of us are already free. We don't become free. Therefore, Atma is regarded or described as Nitya Mukta, ever free. All right, on the benefit part of it, above all, it is ending of sorrow. Mundaka Upanishad has an explicit statement, and there are such statements, hundreds of them, if not more, at various places. Mundaka Upanishad towards the end says, one crosses sorrow, tarati shokam, which appears in Chandogya also, ending of sorrow. Lastly, before we go to the secondary topics, let's say one more thing. What is the way to this realization? So, spiritual practices like listening with attention, with openness, with receptiveness to competent teachers, Shravana, listening is the foremost spiritual practice. Then you separate the grain from the chaff. You separate the essential from the non-essential. Out of thousand things said in the scriptures, even in the Upanishads themselves, you identify what is the central teaching. So the central teaching is your true nature, your oneness with God, your oneness with the divine essence of this universe. That is the central teaching. Coming upon the central teaching, determination of the central teaching happens in listening. However, in spite of recognizing that, okay, this is what the Upanishads mainly say, though there are a number of other topics which also Upanishads take up, having identified the main teaching, we still may have doubts. Therefore, continued reflection, manana, helps us be free of those doubts. And even when we are quite clear in intellectual understanding, old tendencies, habits, old ways of the conditioned mind don't let us go so easily. Therefore, one meditates. Nididhyasana, meditation. Listening, reflection, and meditation thus are prescribed by Upanishads themselves. In the Brihadaranyaka, a loving husband, Yajnavalkya, instructs his wife, Maitreyi, you must listen to the sacred teachings. You must reflect on them, O Maitreyi. You must dwell on them. Then you will know your true nature. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana are thus endorsed or are given, primarily given by the Upanishads. With this, let's move to the second part of this narration or presentation. What are those other topics which also Upanishads cover? Upanishads cover hundreds of other topics, but broadly speaking, in this second category or secondary category, we may mention three areas: karma, upasana, and human values. Upanishads do talk about various karmas, briefly, if not elaborately, and then they say, do not think karma is utterly false. On a certain level of reality, which may not be the ultimate reality, on a certain plane of reality, karma is true and karma phala also is true. Tadetat satyam. This is true. Don't have doubt about it. That if you do a certain karma, like a Vedic ritual, the promise that those portions dwelling on such topics make, that you will go to heaven, the promise comes true. The angels, devatas, will stand at the door to heaven and welcome you in, and so on. So, whether it is secular work or religious work, they have their own reality and they have their own results, which are true also. In one of the sections in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajnavalkya, who otherwise speaks of the highest changeless truth, Brahman, comes down and with another scholar, Arthabhaga, Yajnavalkya has a closed door meeting. They both come out and announce to the whole gathering, of greatest value in life is karma. Act wisely, act carefully, use the time every day for doing meaningful things and with all those implications. Therefore, karma is upheld, karma phala is endorsed, but then on a higher level, they are negated. Just as nobody can deny the beauty of a rainbow, we see the rainbow. It is beautiful. It has that shape. It has those 7 colors, Vibgyor, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. No one denies. But then, on another plane, the rainbow is nothing but an optic illusion. Water drops in the air cause diffraction, diffusion. Light gets separated into its 7 components, and that's how a spectator sees a rainbow. So, really, what you have over there is just water drops. Both these have their own place. Upanishads, therefore, do uphold karma. Then comes the second area, Upasana. In a number of Upanishads, certain Upasanas are prescribed, are endorsed, their benefit is confirmed. In Taittiriya Upanishad, in the first Valli, Shiksha Valli, the first section, several upasanas are prescribed. Meditate on the glory of Bhuhu, on Bhuvaha, on Suvaha, on Mahaha. These are words with their own meanings, with their own significance. Meditate on the inner space in your heart, says another Upanishad. Visualize a lotus bud that is turned upside down. In that space of the lotus bud, visualize certain supreme divinity, etc. Upasanas talk about divinity, talk about divine glory all around us in air, in fire, in water, and so on. But the distinct feature of upasanas is what you worship and you, the worshipper, are separate. Therefore, they are mental exercises and they are forms of meditation. We call them qualified meditation. Whereas Brahma Vidya is or it involves meditation on truth without qualities. Nirguna, Nirakar. Whereas in Upasanas, in these qualified meditations, the object of meditation has qualities. Therefore, it is qualified object of meditation. The meditation itself is therefore known as qualified meditation. Savishesha. Vishesha means something that qualifies, that sets apart A from B. You have 2 cars, as I'm sitting here in a friend's house in New York State. Through the window, I see 2 cars right now. One is black, another is white. So when I say, oh, that car behind is black, that black is certain description that distinguishes it from the second car, which is white. Likewise, Upasana involves conjuring up in our mind something wonderful, something divine, something mighty, and that object of meditation has qualities. And I have my qualities. I am the worshipper. I am the one hoping to receive benefits, receive blessings. So I am described in certain way. What I meditate upon is described in a certain way, and that sets the stage for upasanas. Upanishads talk about upasanas at many places. To such an extent, let me say this and then go to next topic. In Chandogya Upanishad, generally in most traditional ashrams, they skip or almost skip the first 5 chapters because the first 5 chapters have lots of upasanas and a little bit of the higher teaching or the highest teaching. Dahara Upasana and so many which are not so commonly practiced in these times. But Upasana is different from karma in the sense, in karma, there is physical action involved, various samagri, materials are used, a fire is lit up, and rules and regulations are followed which involve physical dimension. Fast, go around the fire, sit, stand, offer something into the fire. All this is physical activities. In Upasana, as the Sanskrit expression goes, Manasa Vyapara, it is mental activity. A little of physical movement might be there, but very little. Even if it is there, it is unimportant or very less important. Primarily, Upasana is mental exercises. With this, we say uh, Chandogya first 5 chapters have 80% upasanas only. So in many ashrams, straight away they go to the last three, 6, 7, and 8, which are 90% Brahma Vidya. I wouldn't say 90. There are some values, human values, and so on. But primarily they are into the higher Vishnu. So Upanishads do talk of karma, we said already. Then they do talk about upasana, and then scattered over the many works, many scriptures, many shastras, many particular essays, dialogues, and so on, there are human values. Many of you, or many of them, those human values, anybody among you already has heard. Maybe somebody who is very new also in this audience would have heard something which I will quote now, but would not have known probably that it is from an Upanishad. For example, what appears on the emblem of India, Satyameva Jayate. The truthful ones only win, only become victorious. Satyameva Jayate. Literally, truth alone wins. But what is meant is those who are into truth, they will win. Those who embrace falsehood lose out. This is from Mundaka Upanishad. Likewise, same Mundaka Upanishad talks a little more on Satya. Talking of human values, Kathopanishad has a famous line which Vivekananda modified slightly and made it much more popular than otherwise. He said, arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. The original line in Kathopanishad is, arise, awake, go to competent teachers and know the truth. Uttisthata, jāgrata, prāpyavarānnibodhata. That's a value. Do not lie back. Do not waste your time. Do not say whatever will have to happen will happen at its own time. Now let's see what is there in the kitchen, what movie is showing in the theaters around. That kind of casual, careless, indulgent approach is not at all permitted. You must arise, you must awake, and you must know the truth by listening to, by interacting with competent teachers. Then you have in Upanishad, to give another example of human values, a wonderful story. The human beings and devas, gods, that is devatas, and then asuras go to Prajapati for some advice. All of them were discontent and sort of sad in their own hearts, though otherwise envied and feared by others. They had their own tale of tears. They went to Prajapati for some spiritual instruction so that they may get some solace. And in that interesting story, Prajapati just says, the, a monosyllable, and vanishes. However, devas, that is devatas in heaven, residents of heaven, they get together and contemplate on the, and they understand the means dhamyata. There is so much of enjoyment in heaven, and devatas look within themselves and realize we should not, just because enjoyments are available, we should not overindulge. We should control our senses. Human beings also take that monosyllable the and contemplate, and it occurs to them. By the, our Father, the Divine Father, has told us, Datta, give, share your wealth. For we tend to hoard, we tend to collect so much for ourselves. Even if our neighbor is hungry and the other neighbor is shivering with cold, we don't share the food we have or the woolen clothes that we have. We must share our wealth, share our knowledge, share everything that we possess with fellow beings. That is dana. Therefore, dhamma, self-control, especially on the plane of the indriyas, sense organs and organs of action. Then dana, sharing, donating, giving, charity. Now, what about asuras? The very cruel and harsh and uh, wild community. Asuras also reflect on the, and then they realize what he said is exactly made for us. We have to be more compassionate. At the drop of a hat, we have been hurting people, injuring people, unwarranted. We make comments or even make physical acts which leave people bleeding. That's not right on our part. We must practice daya. Therefore, damyata, datta, dayadhvam in the original, control your senses, share your wealth, and be compassionate, be kind, are the teachings that come out through a nice story. It is said or it is recorded that T.S. Eliot, the Nobel Prize winner for literature, included this story from Brihadaranyaka in one of his works called Wasteland. So Upanishadic teachings have made an impact on people around the world. Around the world, great scholars, writers, thinkers, philosophers, poets, and so on have been touched by Upanishads, especially in the last few centuries. So, one more example in the context of human values may be given. In Kena Upanishad, much of the mantras dwell on the highest teaching, the pure consciousness, the pure self, which the Kenopanishad would describe as the ear of the ear, eye of the eye, speech behind speech, its own mystical poetic language, by which it means the mantras mean that principle in you because of which ears are able to hear, eyes are able to see, and so on. That is the highest teaching. But at the end of this Upanishad, Kena Upanishad from Samaveda, a student requests the teacher over there to teach him Brahma Vidya. A bit humorous scenario. All along, the teacher was talking on Brahma Vidya only, but this student apparently did not understand anything, which means he did not have the necessary fitness, the eligibility. He had to prepare himself. In fact, let it be said, karma and upasana are the ways to prepare our mind. If we straight away try to go for jnana, we either won't understand anything, or what is worse, we may misunderstand many things and we may live a more unrighteous life than ever before. So, karma and upasana, especially doing our duty with sincerity, and spending some time in training our mind to gain concentration, to gain stamina, to gain the ability to stay with a higher thought for a good length of time. For a lot of us do appreciate divine spiritual thoughts, but so quickly we get distracted. To sit and stay focused on some higher truth requires a stamina of its own kind. So one must do upasanas. One must get purity of mind and the single pointedness, chitta shuddhi and chitta ekagrata. Then one can succeed. In this way, uh, in the Kena Upanishad, the boy was not boy or girl, that particular student could not understand anything. Then the teacher very compassionately says that for that Brahma Vidya, for that highest wisdom, you need to have certain spiritual practices. Tapaha, certain austere ways of living by which you will shake off your negativities. You will arrive more at that stamina. You will have greater inner strength. Tapaha, damaha, satyam, vedaha. A few words are used, and those are pointers to living a life of integrity. A life of integrity. All the Upanishads do this. Krishna Upanishad says the highest realization can come to only those who are totally transparent, who do not deceive others, who do not practice ways of falsehood. Like that, in almost all the Upanishads, with a few exceptions. An Upanishad like Mandukya Upanishad does not have mantras on human values. Unless you interpret certain mantras in a broader way and bring values into them, literally the mantra doesn't touch upon satya or daya or dama or dana or tapaha, vedadhyayana, study of the Vedas, and so on. Directly they don't talk. But most Upanishads do cover human values, morality, ethics, sadachar, right conduct, and so on. Satyam vada, dharmam chara is another very well-known example from the Taittiriya Upanishad. Speak truth and live righteously. Then you will get ready for receiving that liberating wisdom. That is the implication. In this way, Upanishads are a source of most wonderful spiritual teachings. No wonder Swami Vivekananda said on a certain occasion, leave everything and go to the bright, luminous Upanishads. All strength will come to you through Upanishads, he said. On another occasion, he said, in the last few weeks, some people were following him, apparently, in America, I guess. They were following him because he made such a tremendous impact at the first parliament of the world's religions in Chicago that a number of Americans gathered around him. Some of them would listen to him wherever he went. I guess he spoke to them. If you heard anything precious in my teachings in the last few weeks, all of that was from Upanishads. I have not spoken anything which is not from Upanishads, he says at a certain place. He thus brought Vedanta to the Western world very effectively. Thus, we have covered in this particular webinar to begin with the meaning of the word Upanishad, what its primary teaching is, what this non dual wisdom is, what the stepping stones to that gaining of that wisdom are, and so on. And then in the second part, the importance of right action, noble action, karma, the importance of exercises to purify our mind, to make it single pointed, upasana, and the importance of living a life of right values, human values, that is, maulya, you may say, or um, virtues, or you may call it dharma vichara. Brahma vichara is deliberation into higher truth, the highest truth, and dharma vichara is this business of leaving wrong ways and doing right things. With this, bowing down before the great rishis through whom God gave to us the luminous Upanishads, we conclude this presentation. Om Namah Paramarshibhyo Namah Paramarshibhyah. This particular webinar will not have a question and answer session. It ends here. I wish every one of you all the best in your spiritual quest. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namo Narayana.